Um, let's play a game. It's a bit of a grim game, but bear with me here.
All right, I'm on game.
Okay, so imagine waking up on June 30th, 2028. You grab your phone off the nightstand, you check the news. The unemployment rate just crossed 10.2%.
Oof, that's rough.
Yeah, and it gets worse. You check your portfolio, and the S&P 500 is down 38% from its all-time highs. It genuinely feels like a full-blown depression.
Right. People are losing their jobs. Wealth is just vanishing.
Exactly. But then, and this is where it gets weird, you look at the corporate earnings reports. Productivity is absolutely skyrocketing. Profit margins are technically better than ever because companies are running with leaner crews than at any point in human history.
It's basically the ultimate economic paradox. I mean, you look at the charts and they look fantastic, but the streets are completely empty.
Yes, that disconnect, that really uncomfortable gap between these hyper-efficient markets and a visibly crumbling society, that is the entire focus of today's deep dive.
And it is a fascinating one to unpack.
It really is. We are looking at a document today that is just making massive waves in the macro finance world right now. It's a report titled The 2028 Global Intelligence Crisis.
Right. Published just this month, February 2026, by Citrini Research.
Exactly. And before we just, spiral into panic here, we need to frame this correctly for everyone listening. Citrini is not coming out and saying, this is absolutely guaranteed to happen.
No, definitely not. This is scenario modeling. It's a thought exercise, really, a stress test. They're basically asking a very specific and, frankly, a very uncomfortable question.
Because
What if the AI bulls are completely right about the technology? Like, the tech does exactly what they promise, but the economic fallout is actually incredibly bearish.
right, because we usually just assume that if the tech is amazing, the economy booms, everybody gets richer. But this report argues the exact opposite. It argues that if AI gets really, really good, really, really fast, it fundamentally breaks the velocity of money.
Yeah, and they use a great term for this. They call it ghost GDP.
Ghost GDP. Break that down for us.
So ghost GDP describes a world where gross domestic product, the total output, stays really high. And that's because machines are generating massive amounts of value. They're writing code, they're generating content, doing financial analysis, optimizing logistics, all of it.
So output is booming.
Right. But the money stops moving because, think about it, machines don't buy lattes, they don't pay income tax, they don't book flights to Cancun for a vacation.
Yeah, an AI agent doesn't need a kitchen renovation.
Exactly. So you get this massive supply-side boom, infinite digital goods and services, but the consumer demand just evaporates because the humans don't have paychecks.
It's a terrifying roadmap, honestly. But what I really appreciate about this source material is that it doesn't just wave its hands and say, robots are going to take the jobs.
Yeah.
It actually traces the specific financial plumbing.
It does. It lays out the exact mechanics.
Yeah, it lays out this whole daisy chain of contagion.
Yeah.
And it starts right now in 2026 and traces it all the way to that hypothetical crash in 2028. So my mission for us today is to walk through this timeline phase by phase.
Let's do it. Where do we start?
Phase 1 starts with what the report calls the software crash. And according to the timeline, this is happening basically right now. Late 2025, early 2026 is the tipping point. And the catalyst isn't just that AI generally exists, it's specifically the shift to something called agentic coding.
This is a really crucial distinction to make. For the last couple of years, we've had co-pilots. You type a prompt into an interface, the AI spits out a snippet of code, and you paste it into your project.
Right, it's like a really smart autocomplete.
Exactly. It helps, it saves time, but you absolutely still need a human engineer to understand the broader architecture.
The human is the glue holding the project together.
Yes. But now, with tools like Claude Code or the latest iterations of Codex, the source points out that we've moved to agents. The context windows on these models are so massive now, the AI can hold the entire code base of a company in its memory at once.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. It can architect, it can debug, it can deploy. It moves the human from being in the loop doing the work to just being on the loop managing the AI.
And the economic implication of that, according to the report, is this massive build versus buy shift. There's this one anecdote in the document that I think just nails this concept perfectly. It describes a fictional procurement manager at a Fortune 500 company.
Right. The guy whose whole job is deciding what software the company buys.
Exactly. So standard operating procedure. A vendor comes in for a yearly renewal. Let's say it's for a big project management tool. The vendor says, hey, inflation's up, server costs are up. We need a 5% price hike on this $500,000 contract.
Which happens every year in enterprise software.
Every single year. But in this 2026 scenario, the manager pauses. He goes and talks to his internal engineering team, and they realize something completely game-changing.
They realize they don't need to buy it anymore. They can just build it.
Yes, they can just prompt an internal AI agent to replicate the core features of that $500,000 tool in, like, a few weeks.
And sure, it might not be as polished. Maybe it lacks a few bells and whistles or fancy dashboard colors.
Right, but it's 90% there.
Yeah.
And it costs a fraction of the price. You're just paying for the compute.
And that realization just absolutely destroys the pricing power of the entire SaaS industry. Software as a service.
Yeah.
Think about the long tail of software companies, the Zapiers, the Asanas, Monday.com.
The tools that just make office life a little easier.
Yeah, their entire business model relies on charging you a recurring monthly fee to do something slightly convenient. But if an AI agent can glue your internal apps together for basically free, that monthly fee goes to zero. The market evaporates.
But the report emphasizes it's not just the small, long-tail players that get hurt. They actually model a crash for a massive giant in this space. ServiceNow.
That's a great example to dig into.
Yeah, they put this as the first big domino falling in October 2026. And the mechanics are incredibly ironic. So ServiceNow creates efficiency tools for IT departments. In the scenario, ServiceNow cuts 15% of their own human workforce to boost their margins using AI.
And initially, Wall Street loves that.
Exactly. The stock pops. They're being efficient. But then reality hits. ServiceNow's business model is selling seats. They charge their clients per human user that needs a login.
Ah, right.
Well, their clients are also using AI to become hyper-efficient.
Yeah.
So the clients start firing humans too. And when the clients fire humans, they don't need those software licenses anymore. They cancel the ServiceNow seats.
So ServiceNow's revenue literally collapses because the efficiency they are selling to the market is actually working too well.
Exactly.
It's pure reflexivity. It creates this corporate death spiral. Every single dollar a company saves on labor by using AI goes into funding the exact technology that replaces even more labor, which then further shrinks the addressable market for any software that is sold to human workers.
So that's phase one. The software market implodes because the human seats disappear. This obviously pushes companies to get really desperate. Revenues are falling, so they need to cut costs even more aggressively just to survive.
Right, the knife fight begins.
Then a knife fight.
Yeah.
And that desperation drives us directly into phase two of the timeline. The report calls this when friction goes to zero. And this hits in 2027.
This is where the consumer economy completely rewrites itself, because by 2027, in this model, everyone is using AI agents not just to code at work, but to live their daily lives, to shop, to book travel, to manage the personal finances.
And the key insight here from Citrini is that AI agents are ruthless.
They are completely rational economic actors, and humans are not. Think about why you personally use DoorDash, or why you stick with your current car insurance provider even when rates go up.
Honestly, because I'm lazy. I already have the app on my phone, my credit card is linked. I really don't want to spend an hour filling out 20 different forms on the Tuesday night just to save $12 a month.
Precisely. That laziness, that inertia, is what economists call friction. And in our current economy, friction isn't a bug. It is a massive feature.
It's a business model.
Exactly. Entire intermediation layers, companies like Uber, Expedia, insurance brokers, they make trillions of dollars globally just monetizing your unwillingness to shop around.
Right.
But an AI agent, it doesn't get tired. It doesn't get frustrated by CAPTCHAs. It doesn't care about the DoorDash logo or loyalty points.
It just instantly scans every single restaurant website, every independent delivery network, every local courier service, and it finds the exact same burger for $4 less. Instantly.
And just like that, the defensive moat of habitual intermediation just vanishes. The report even uses this term agent-on-agent violence, particularly in industries like real estate.
Oh, the real estate example was brutal.
Right. Why on earth would you pay a 3% commission to a human buy-side real estate agent when your personal AI can just negotiate the contracts directly with the seller's AI agent? The fee drops from 3% to under 1% overnight.
But the part of phase two that really stopped me in my tracks was the attack on the payments industry. The report specifically predicts a market crash for Visa and MasterCard in April 2027. And I've always thought of those companies as bulletproof. They're the ultimate toll booth. You literally can't avoid them.
You couldn't avoid them when humans were buying things from other humans. But let's think about the actual mechanics of a credit card swipe. That interchange fee is roughly 2 to 3% of every transaction.
Right.
That is a massive hidden tax on the entire global economy. Merchants absolutely despise it.
Sure, merchants hate it, but we as consumers gladly pay it for the convenience
Yeah.
and the fraud protection and the airline miles.
Humans do, yes. But if an AI agent is buying something from another AI agent, they don't care about airline miles. They don't need consumer fraud protection in the traditional sense, and they definitely don't need convenience. What they need is finality.
Instant settlement.
Exactly. So the report suggests that these autonomous agents will naturally, logically gravitate toward using stablecoins on blockchains, things like Solana or Ethereum Layer 2 networks.
Because the settlement is actually instant and it costs a fraction of a penny?
Right. Why would a highly optimized machine choose to pay a 3% fee to Visa when it can pay 0.001% to a Solana validator? It makes no mathematical sense. So the friction of the legacy banking system becomes the very first thing these agents optimize away.
So Visa and MasterCard just lose their transaction volume. The toll booth gets bypassed completely.
And that leads to a collapse in their stock prices.
Right.
It all comes back to that theme of ghost GDP. The transaction still happens, the physical goods still move from a warehouse to your door, but the financial velocity, the credit card fees, the middlemen, they all get mathematically cut out of the loop.
Okay, so we've gutted enterprise software revenue, and we've gutted the financial intermediaries. Now we have to talk about the human toll. Phase 3, the intelligence displacement spiral. The report calls this the white-collar recession.
And we really have to be specific about who is getting hit here. This is not like the 2008 financial crisis, where construction workers and manufacturing took the brunt of the pain.
Yeah.
This particular crisis surgically targets the top 10 to 20% of earners.
We're talking about product managers, management consultants, junior corporate lawyers,
Yeah.
mid-level marketing executives.
Yeah, exact people who live in expensive suburbs and drive the consumer economy. The macroeconomic data shows that these top earners drive roughly 65% of all discretionary spending in the U.S. They are the ones buying the new electric cars. They're the ones renovating their kitchens, taking the family to Disney World.
So when this specific demographic loses their income, or honestly, even if they just start living in fear of losing it, their consumption falls off an absolute cliff.
Exactly. And that creates a brutal feedback loop. The laid-off project manager stops going out to eat, so the restaurant fires the waiter. The laid-off consultant takes a lower-paying gig economy job just to make ends meet, which floods the service sector with desperate labor, crashing wages at the bottom, too.
And there's a fascinating geopolitical angle to this displacement that the report highlights. It contrasts the fate of India versus Taiwan in this scenario.
Oh, the shovels versus diggers divergence? This is a great point. So Taiwan physically manufactures the chips. They build the infrastructure of AI. TSMC is there churning out silicon. So in this scenario, Taiwan's economy absolutely booms. They are selling the shovels in the middle of a gold rush.
What did India?
India is primarily a service-exporting economy. A huge chunk of their economic miracle over the last few decades has been built on outsourcing. Western companies outsourcing their coding, their call centers, their back-office admin tasks.
Right.
But if a cluster of AI agents in a data center can do all of that administrative work for literally the cost of electricity, that entire international revenue stream for India just evaporates overnight. The report models a severe currency crisis for service-heavy economies, while hardware-heavy, convex economies absolutely thrive.
It creates this extreme global bifurcation. Basically, if you own the physical compute power, you win. If your national export is human time, you lose. Which brings us to phase 4. And this is where the financial plumbing of the system really gets clogged. The private credit crisis.
Right, this is probably the most technical part of the Citrini report, but arguably it's the most important because it's the transmission mechanism to the broader market. We have to talk about how the massive software boom of the 2010s and 2020s was actually funded.
Well, a lot of it was private equity, right?
Yes. Private equity firms bought up thousands of boring, behind-the-scenes B2B software companies, and to buy them, they used massive amounts of debt. This is what we call private credit. Unlike public corporate bonds that you trade on the stock market every day, these are private, bespoke loans. They don't have a daily price ticker.
Which makes them feel stable. You
Yeah.
log into your portfolio, and the price never seems to fluctuate.
Right, they look perfectly safe until they suddenly aren't. Because these massive loans were heavily underwritten based on a metric called ARR, annual recurring revenue. The fundamental assumption of the loan was, once a mid-sized company installs Zendesk or Salesforce, they will literally never leave. The switching costs are too high.
It's basically treated like a permanent annuity.
Exactly. But we just established back in phase one that AI completely breaks that assumption. The revenue isn't recurring anymore. Companies can easily switch, or they just build their own internal tools using agents.
And so the cash flow that is supposed to be paying the interest on these billions of dollars in private loans just dries up.
Precisely. The report details a fictional but highly plausible default of Zendesk in September 2027. It represents the largest ARR-backed loan in financial history, and it goes straight to zero.
Okay, so a big software company goes bust. Private equity takes a hit. That happens. But why does the report say this triggers a systemic global financial crisis? Who is actually holding the bag on this debt?
That is the trillion-dollar question, because over the last few years, the really big alternative asset managers think Apollo, KKR, these massive financial titans, they've been quietly buying up life insurance companies.
Wait, really? Why would a high-flying Wall Street firm buy boring life insurance companies?
Because they are desperate for permanent capital. See, if you run a standard hedge fund, your investors can get spooked and pull their money out during a panic. You have to sell assets. But if you own a life insurance company, you control the float. That's the monthly premiums every day people pay for their retirement annuities and life insurance policies.
Oh, man.
That money is sticky. It legally sits there for decades until the person retires or dies.
Let me get this straight. You're saying these Wall Street firms took grandma's boring, safe annuity money and they lent it out to high-risk software companies through private credit.
That is exactly the mechanism the report outlines. They chased higher yields. They told regulators, don't worry, enterprise software is incredibly safe. It always pays its bills. But when those software companies start mass defaulting in late 2027, the insurance companies are suddenly left holding a massive bag of worthless, completely illiquid private loans.
And you can't exactly fire sell a defaulted private software loan over the weekend to pay out a pensioner's monthly insurance claim.
You can't sell it at all. The market is frozen. So regulators are forced to step in. This is November 2027 in the report's timeline. And they officially downgrade the quality of all these private credit assets. This downgrade legally forces the insurance companies to raise emergency capital, but the capital markets are closed.
Wow.
So it creates a severe liquidity crisis right inside the insurance sector. And the insurance sector is basically the financial safety net of the entire middle class.
That is heavy. It moves from tech bros in San Francisco are losing their jobs to teacher pension funds and retirement annuities are at risk of insolvency very, very quickly.
It scales up instantly.
And that financial freeze sets up the final domino in the report. Phase 5, the breakdown of the real world, housing and taxes in 2028.
This is where the macro theory finally hits Main Street. Now, in 2008, we had a subprime mortgage crisis. Wall Street gave bad loans to people with terrible credit who couldn't pay them back. But this 2028 scenario models a prime borrower crisis.
People with like 780 FICO credit scores.
Exactly. These are the product managers, the software engineers, the lawyers we talked about earlier. On paper, they did everything right. They put 20% down on their houses. They have flawless payment histories.
Right.
But their $250,000 a year email job just got permanently deleted by a cluster of AI agents. And the only job they can find in this new economy is a localized gig economy role, paying maybe $40,000 a year.
And the math just fundamentally doesn't work. You literally cannot pay a $6,000 a month San Francisco mortgage on a gig economy wage.
You can't. You default. The report notes a scenario where the Zillow Home Price Index falls 11% in San Francisco alone, with mortgage delinquencies violently spiking in what used to be considered completely bulletproof, wealthy zip codes.
And this inevitably cascades straight into the government's balance sheet.
Yeah, because of how taxes work.
Exactly. If you think about it, the United States government is essentially a giant financial machine designed to tax human labor. Income tax and payroll tax are the primary revenue sources that keep the country running.
But in this Citrini scenario, the labor share of GDP, the amount of the economy that actually goes to human wages drops from roughly 64%, where it's been pretty stable historically, down to 46%.
So at the exact moment the government desperately needs trillions of dollars to bail out the failing insurance companies and to support millions of newly unemployed white-collar workers, their tax revenue is collapsing because robots don't pay income tax.
Exactly. It completely limits the government's ability to just print money and do a massive stimulus like they did in 2020. You can't borrow indefinitely if your underlying tax base is permanently shrinking. And this leads directly to the social unrest described at the end of the report. They picture these massive Occupy Silicon Valley protests, thousands of people physically blockading the headquarters of OpenAI and Anthropic.
Which makes sense. It's a visceral rejection of a system where the owners of capital, the people who own the AI and the data centers, capture literally 100% of the productivity gains and labor gets zero. It's an incredibly grim picture to paint. 10% unemployment, markets crashing, social unrest.
But the report ends on a philosophical note that I think is really important for us to grasp. They call it the intelligence premium unwind.
Yeah, and this is the fundamental repricing of the human experience.
Mm.
If you look at all of human history, intelligence was the ultimate scarce resource. If you were smart, if you could compute complex math, analyze legal text, write elegant code, you demanded a premium in the market. A high salary, high social status.
I mean, that's what our entire modern education system is built on, right? Go to an expensive college, become smarter than the next guy so you can earn more money.
Exactly. But in this specific future, intelligence isn't scarce anymore. It is infinitely abundant. It's like electricity. It's practically free. The global economy suddenly realizes that cognitive intelligence is no longer the bottleneck to production. So the premium, the high wages, the value of university degrees, the massive consultancy fees, it just unwinds completely.
That's still total inversion of what society values.
But okay, let's take a breath and pull back for a second. We're sitting here having this conversation in 2026. The canary in the coal mine is still alive.
Yes, and that is by far the most important takeaway for anyone listening. This report is a model. It's a highly detailed warning system. We are absolutely seeing the early signs right now. The agentic coding tools are already hitting the market. The private credit exposure is very real and verifiable, but the cascade hasn't fully triggered yet.
Right, so we still have a window to react. But the question this source material leaves us with is the one I just can't stop thinking about.
It's the ultimate structural question of our generation. If we are actively building a world where the most productive asset ever created, AI, is structurally designed to eliminate the need for human labor, how do we fundamentally reorganize society? We can't just rely on the old political playbook of, we'll just create more jobs, if the stated goal of the new technology is to end them.
We don't just need a patch. We need a completely new operating system for society.
Exactly.
Well, there is definitely a lot to chew on there. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought that builds on all of this. Something the report didn't explicitly dive into but feels incredibly relevant.
What's that?
Think about the advertising industry. The entire trillion-dollar global ad industry is built on manipulating human psychology, making us feel inadequate so we buy a certain brand of car or a specific luxury watch.
Right.
But if phase 2 actually happens, and AI agents are doing all the buying and optimizing for us based purely on price and utility, you can't psychologically manipulate an open source algorithm. It doesn't have an ego. So does the entire marketing and advertising sector just vanish overnight. If persuasion has no economic value anymore, what happens to all those companies?
Wow, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
It really is. Something to mull over. We're going to leave it right there for today. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.